to the question of God, and a big ridiculous question: who's God?
Who is God? So I'm going to use sort of the Aquinas formulation of what God is, right? That if there is a cause of all things, not physical things, if there is a cause underlying the reason of the universe, then that is the thing we call God. So not a big guy in the sky with a beard, like he is the force underlying the logic of the universe, if there is a logic to the universe, and he is the creator in the Judaic view of that universe, and he does have an interest in us living in accordance with the laws of the universe that, if you're a religious Jew, are encoded in the Torah, but if you're not a religious Jew, it would be encoded in the natural law by sort of Catholic theology.
Why do you think God created the universe? Or, as is popularly asked, what do you think is the meaning behind it? What's the meaning of life?
What's the meaning of life? So I think that the meaning of life is to fulfill what God made you to do, and that is a series of roles. I think that human beings, and here you have to look to sort of human nature, rather than looking kind of to big questions. I've evolved something that I've really been working on, and I'm writing a book about this actually, that I call colloquially role theory. And basically the idea is that the way that we interact with the world is through a series of roles. And those are also the things we find most important and most implementable. Right? There's sort of virtue ethics, right, which suggests that if we act in accordance with virtue, like Aristotle, then we will be living the most fulfilled and meaningful life. And then you have sort of deontological ethics, like Kantian ethics, that it's a rule-based ethic. If you follow the rules, then you'll find the meaning of life. And then what I'm proposing is that there's something that I would call role ethics, which is there are a series of roles that we play across our lives, which are also the things that we tend to put on our tombstones and find the most meaningful. So when you go to a cemetery, you can see what people found the most meaningful because it's the stuff they put on the stone that has like 4 words on it, right? They're like beloved father, beloved mother, sister, brother. And you might have a job once in a while, a creator, a religious person, right? These are all roles that have existed across societies and across humanity. And those are the things where we actually find meaning. And the way that we navigate those roles brings us meaning. And I think that God created us in order to fulfill those roles for purposes that I can't begin to understand because I ain't him. And the more we recognize those roles and the more we live those roles, and then we can express freedom within those roles. I think that the liberty exists inside each of those roles, and that's what makes all of our lives different and fun. We all parent in different ways, but being a parent is a meaningful role. We all have spouses, but how you interact that relationship is what makes your life meaningful and interesting. And that is what we were put on earth to do. And if we perform those roles properly, and those roles do include things like being a creator, like we have a creative instinct as human beings, being a creator or being an innovator, being a defender of your family, being somebody who builds up, being a social member of your community, which is something that we're built to do. If we fulfill those roles properly, then we will have made the world a better place than we inherited it. And we will also have had the joy of experiencing the sort of flow they talk about in psychology, where when you engage in these roles, you actually do feel a flow.
So these roles are a fundamental part of the human condition.
Yes.
So the book you're working on is constructing a system to help us understand.
It's looking
roles.
at, let's assume that all of that's true. The real question of the book is, how do you construct a flourishing and useful society and politics?
So it's a society level. If this is our understanding of a human being, how do we construct a good society?
Right, exactly. Because I think that a lot of political theory is right now based in either J.S. Mill kind of thought, which is all that a good politics does allows you to wave your hand around until you hit somebody in the face, or Rawlsian thought, which is what if we constructed society in order to achieve the most for the least, essentially? What if we constructed society around what actually makes humans the most fulfilled, and that is the fulfillment of these particular roles? And where does liberty come into that, right? How do you avoid the idea of a tyranny in that? Right? How do you have to be a mother, you must be a father, you must be where does freedom come into that? Can you reject those roles totally as a society and be okay? The answer probably is not. So you need a society that actually promotes and protects those roles, but also protects the freedom inside those roles. And that raises a more fundamental question of what exactly liberty is for. And I think that both the right and the left actually tend to make a mistake when they discuss liberty. The left tends to think that liberty is an ultimate good, that simple choice makes a bad thing good, which is not true. And I think the right talks about liberty in almost the same terms sometimes. And I think that's not true either. The question is whether liberty is of inherent value or instrumental value.